Just keep lighting up. Well, good morning. It's 8 o'clock. We will try to get started promptly on time. Hey, Lauren, how you doing? We're going to start with prayer this morning. I'm going to ask Chairman Smith if he will open in prayer for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lord, we do thank you for this day. I want to ask that you be with a lot of people across this state that maybe have lost loved ones or have people that are real sick. You are the great physician, and you know how to heal people's hearts as well as people's bodies. So I ask that you be with them. I ask you to be with our families who we miss while we're here, and they miss us, but we with all our children and our grandchildren. Lead, guide, and direct us, and grant us wisdom, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Do we have a sign-up sheet up front? We will have a sign-up sheet up here for anybody who wants to speak to any one of the measures that we have before us this morning. So if you would love to speak or want to speak to one of those issues, please sign up. The first bill we're going to have this morning will be Senate Bill 352. Chairman Lee Anderson from the Senate. Where'd Lee? There, right here. If you come to the table and tell us about your bill. Now we combined this bill with Representative Chairman Carson's bill last week, and he explained his part. If you will talk about what you're trying to do. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 352 LC 394241S. Basically, we put in, like you said, Representative Carson's part into this bill, which I'm fine with, and my part is basically was where you cannot fluctuate no more than 4 inches front or back. The state of South Carolina passed this bill last year, and I couldn't come up with a name like they did, but they called it the Carolina Squatter. And basically what it was is where you take a vehicle and the back end be almost dragging the ground and the front end is way up in the air. Unsafe to drive, headlights is not in the right place. And this basically makes it where your front and your back cannot fluctuate no more than 4 inches. And we also put in the bill to where, the way I understand it with legal counsel, that putting in highway, that means any public road that we have.
And that was my understanding from last week, but I want to verify with Jenna. The highway takes, whether it's a paved road, dirt road, any county or
any county road.
That's cleanup. That takes care of that, and that was my understanding last week. So that is correct.
All right. That's all it is.
That's on this bill. Okay. Do we have any questions for Chairman Anderson? Number 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate the bill, but 4 inches is kind of like this.
Right.
So you're saying if I've got a big dually or whatever, and
your front and your back cannot fluctuate no more than 4 inches.
oh, okay, so like this.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to get a vision in my head,
Yeah. You've seen these trucks he's talking about where they have to hold their head out the window to drive them. They can't see over the front.
Well, not only that, I wonder how they get in. I didn't see the step ladder.
But all right, that will be in just a moment. We do have one person signed up to speak to this measure, Tendra Cannelli. Am I saying that correct? All right, if you'll come to the podium or to the table, either one, and tell us your name and who you're with.
Sure. My name's Tendra Cannella. I'm a member of GTLA, but I'm here on behalf of my client. This issue is near and dear to my heart, so I want to talk briefly about what the bill does and what the implications are for Georgians. And I apologize, I was not in town when the Senate heard the bill, so I wasn't able to speak at the Senate committee. But first thing it does is it doubles and in some cases triples the amount a car can be lifted. The original bill was the current law is 2 inches. you can see on lines 15 through 23 of the bill that it strikes out the 2 inches. You can't alter it, and you can't operate it if it's lifted more than 2 inches. And then it replaces it with 4 and 6 inches. And you can see that at lines 34 through 39. Why that matters to Georgians. It will, number one, increase fatalities to increase the amount of lift. It will increase the cost to the insurance industry of wrecks. It will void consumers' warranties on their vehicles. It will prevent airbags from operating properly. And it will allow the operation of any amount of lift on Georgia roads, because the only thing the bill outlaws is alteration, unlike the current law, which outlaws alteration or operation of anything over 2 inches. This is a Ford Escape that was hit in the rear by a F-250 with a 4.5-inch lift. The reason it's so dangerous is because if you lift a car, it misses the frame rails. And the frame rails of the car it's hitting is what provides the resistance to keep people safe inside. So in this wreck, a 2-year-old was in the back seat. Parents were in the front seat. They were fine. The driver of the F-250 was fine. But the 2-year-old in the back seat in a car seat, he lost so much occupant space that he was internally decapitated. And the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety is the #1 respected group when it comes to consumer safety, because they're not run by bureaucrats or the government or politicians or auto industry with business interests. They're just trying to keep the cost of wrecks down. And they say that when you have what's called vehicle mismatch between the bumpers, you get this increased injury rate and fatality rate. So the wreck also caused potential harm to the people in the striking vehicle. This is the F-250. It's barely injured because it cut through the Ford Escape like butter. When you don't have that resistance from the frame rails, it just cuts through like butter. And what that does is it alters the way your airbag works. So the airbag in this wreck didn't go off for the F-250. Consumers don't know that. They're not warned of that in this bill. They're not warned of the fact that they may lose part of their warranty on their cars. When you go home tonight, you can look at your operating manual and it will say, do not alter your car more than 2 inches, because if you do, it will void part of your warranty. It makes cars less stable. It makes it more dangerous to the people they hit. Consumers often don't know that it's going to have that effect on their warranty. As I mentioned, there are studies by the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety and by the National Highway Safety Administration that demonstrate this effect on fatalities is increased, and the cost of wrecks is increased. And in addition, I've been doing auto products work for a long time, and it's very rare for the government and auto industry to agree on anything. And in this case, they've all agreed, and automakers voluntarily keep their trucks and utility vans and all those cars within a certain range in order to have that engagement of bumpers. And so I would ask that this bill not be voted out because it will harm Georgia consumers and it will take safety backwards. If there's any questions about the text of the bill and how it alters the lifts, it's not just, the way it's written, it's not just that it will alter or prohibit the unevenness. It just governs lifts in general.
I do have one question. On line 45, where it's 43 through 45, where it talks about it shall be unlawful to alter the suspension system of any truck, motor vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating of not less than 7,500 pounds, basically no more than 31 inches. It's limiting the maximum height there to 31 inches.
Under current law, yes.
Under current law. But we're not striking that here, so that will remain. So I might need some. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the Senate version. I don't know if it's different, but that F-250 that I showed you actually isn't over 31 inches from the ground. So it allows lifts that will take cars outside of that accepted, agreed upon range that automakers intend their cars to be operated at. We do have a question, number 28, Chairman Reed.
Thank you. I'm sorry I got here a little late. Now, who are you with?
I'm a member of GTLA, but I'm here on behalf of my client who lost their 2-year-old in one of these wrecks.
Okay, and I'm sorry about that. Can you show me a truck of the F-250 again?
Yes,
A
sir.
picture of it.
That's a 4.5-inch lift.
Has it got a brush guard on the front of it?
No.
Okay. So that's, I've been around vehicles my whole life.
Yes, sir.
Race cars, I was a mechanic for years. Like my truck, it's got a bumper replacement on it. I have hit enough stuff with it, mainly that wall down there in the basement, and my airbags has not went off yet. So even though it's not lifted, just by putting a replacement bumper on it, it's going to prevent airbags from going off. That doesn't void the warranty. You take automakers, Chevrolet, Ford, Dodge, they've all got these packages that does not void the warranty that comes on them, where they're raised up. They've got Fox suspension on them, all that kind of stuff that you pay extra for, but it does not void the warranty. But what you're talking about frame to frame, if you take a regular F-250 truck that's stock and you take it and they run into a Corvette, their frames are not going to touch each other. It's going to be so much higher that it's going to go through the back of a Corvette or a small car. So I don't know where the frame to frame deal come in, but that's not going to work. And if you take an F-250 like that one, that's an XL from the factory, it's got smaller tires, but if you take that same truck that's in a King Ranch, one's going to have 17-inch wheels on it, one's going to have 20 or 22-inch wheels on it, which is going to raise the truck up. Mm-hmm. So how do you have an argument with the suspension when you can, just by messing around with just the wheel size from the factory that's not voided any warranty, that's not, what you're saying is not going to work?
I can address those. The first one on the warranty, that's actually in the owner's manual. So it does void the warranty for suspension-related items.
But the factories are putting these on there, and it's not voiding the warranties.
I can address that as well. Ford does allow a 2-inch lift, but nothing above that. So they will install that. That's something they started in 2020. But nobody does a 4 or 6-inch lift like this.
I would argue with you on that. There's a company called Spider that all the Chevrolet dealerships go. You can go by any Chevrolet dealership and look sitting out there. They got a 4-inch lift on them. They got 35-inch tires on them, and Fox suspension on them. All that stuff. It's all covered under factory warranty because they're buying it from the dealership that way.
The dealership actually doesn't alter these. They send it off flat, and then they bring them back. Correct.
That's right.
The actual automakers are not altering things.
But they don't void the warranty on them, though.
If you look in your owner's manual when you go to home tonight, I won't argue with you about it because all you have to do is look in your owner's manual, it will say.
Okay.
But then with the airbags are only intended to go off between 18 and 20 miles an hour impact, so it wouldn't go off when you hit the wall in the parking garage. And then the unevenness in wrecks now, because I'm not making this up, this is something the auto industry has agreed to do already because they found that it reduces fatalities. So if you keep it within that range, you reduce fatalities by some numbers 10% or more in these wrecks. There will be some instances where it's not enough, but as a broad matter, this is something the insurance industry has found, the auto industry has found, and they've actually agreed voluntarily to do this, and it's not required by federal law, but they still do it.
All right. Well, thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you for your
Thank you for your time. I appreciate
coming.
it.
Okay, what would be the will of the committee? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. So that motion carries. You have the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, second item on the agenda would be Chairman Powell, House Bill 820. No, sir, right here. What number? 22.
We have a substitute to HB 820, LC 550237S. Bring us, and this is truly a very simple bill. Back in the 90s when the legislature started dealing with the emissions inspections for non-attainment zones, basically the metro area, they had set a standard of what could be charged for these between $10 and $25. That has not been changed since probably, I think, the early 90s. And what this recommends is we go from $10 to $35. Doesn't make it mandatory. It just leaves it up to the discretion of the emissions people that are doing their stations, and they can go from the 10 to the 35. Right now, generally, it's $20. That's what I understand. does not, and I repeat again, it does not expand the non-attainment zones for anywhere further than what it is right now.
And that would be Cherokee, Clayton, Cobb, Coweta, DeKalb, Douglas, Fayette, Forsyth, Fulton, Gwinnett, Henry, Halden, and Rockdale counties is the containment
If
zone.
my chairman says that.
Well, that's the only place that this would take effect. Number 17, Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm really concerned about increasing the rate, especially when we're not doing anything with the frequency or the requirements. There are several states that do not even require emission. So we're changing the price, but we're not doing anything with the requirements. Some states do every 2 years. Some states do not even do it. So why are we not doing anything with the requirements or the frequency?
Would you want to respond?
I have no response to that. I mean, it's what it is.
Okay. Number 18, Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my only concern is two. I mean, we're going up to $25, $35, but we're only dealing with the 10 or 12 counties that require emissions, and and I'm always concerned that we've got 159 counties in the state of Georgia, and they're not requiring emissions, but they still come to Atlanta with their vehicles without emissions. I hear what we're trying to do, but what we're doing is we're increasing the fee for those in those counties and not the 159 counties. They're bringing their vehicles to Atlanta that do not have emissions, and not saying that I have not. I'm in Gwinnett. I mean, I'm honest, and I have 3 vehicles that I have to have emissions on. And if, and then those 3 vehicles right now are $20, I try to go around and find the ones that are least expensive, at least to try to do that. But I do think if we go up to $35, the ones that I've been finding for $17 and $18, they're gonna go to 25 or 30. So I'm only concerned about why are we moving the needle that way for everybody and not leaving it the way it is. I did get something to say that $25 back, and today is worth $55.61. I mean, I don't know what that means, but Mr. Chair, so I just like to know what are we trying to do by moving this up?
Well, that's pretty simple what we're trying to do. In 30-something years of these emissions testings, it's always been that emission testing standards could be from 10 to 25. It left to that discretion. This gives it $10. After 30-something years of being on the books, some of them have decided that they needed a little bit more, and $10 the range. And of course, the fair market is going to probably dictate, as you had said, you shop around, you go to wherever. So it would be basically helping these folks who are in that business. One day you may wake up and there may not be anybody in the business. I can't tell you exactly what's entailed in emission standards. I remember once upon a time when this legislation was originally done, emissions was a big issue. And now all the vehicles that we deal with now, the emissions are pretty well locked in. It's pretty standard what they do. You don't have the day of folks driving around with disconnected emission systems and things like that. So, and as far as going into other parts of Georgia, they're not in those other parts of Georgia, aren't in the attainment zone.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any further questions for the author? I don't see anybody that is signed up to speak to the measure. What would be the will of the committee? I would, number 18.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to table it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to table. Okay, I've acknowledged the table motion. I think we'll vote on that first. All in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Let's do this. Let's by raise of hands. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hands. All opposed to tabling, raise your hand. All right, motion failed. Now, do we have a motion on the bill? All right, we have a motion, do pass. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I think the same way. All in favor, raise your hands. All opposed? Bill passed. All right, let's move on to something that's not quite as contentious anymore. Let's get Representative Patty Stinson, if she will come present a bill that we started working on back in December with the Shepherd Center. Do they have anybody here that would like to speak to the bill this morning, Patty, or not?
I think someone is on their way, but
Okay,
have not arrived just yet.
Okay, we do have a letter of support, but anyway, go ahead and present your bill.
Yes, sir. Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I bring to your attention House Bill 1303, which is a bill to implement a special license plate honoring the Shepherd Center, and the funds raised by the sale of this license plate will be dispersed to the Shepherd Center Incorporated, and the reason, and which will go into effect January 1st, 2025. And for those that don't know, the Shepherd Center is very dear to my heart. My late husband was involved in a single car accident in May of 2018 and suffered a spinal cord injury. And had it not been for the Shepherd Center, I don't know what we would have done. Because living in rural Georgia and not having access to a facility, a medical facility that can treat someone with a spinal cord injury was really tough. But the mere fact that the Shepherd Center was able to provide those services to help us was a godsend, and we were very grateful. And they are now celebrating the 50th anniversary this year, and so this license plate will be to help commemorate their 50th anniversary, knowing that they've been in the state of Georgia for 50 years, helping families across this state and other states as well get back to a sense of normality after suffering a brain injury or spinal cord injury. So I'm asking for your support in allowing this special license plate to be implemented for the Shepherd Center. And again, the funds will go to the sale of, be dispersed to the Shepherd Center Incorporated.
Thank you for bringing the bill. Like I said, we've
Yes,
been
sir.
working on this since back in
That's right.
December.
We
and
have.
It has taken this long to get all the necessary paperwork done. As far as they stroked a check for $25,000 to DOR to
did.
cover the cost of the first
did.
1,000 plates.
Yes.
They've got the letter from DOR that all their requirements have been met.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And we have that, so we're good with that. And I'd just like to say personally, I have two constituents in the last 3 years that have spent time in the Shepherd Center, and I've went there personally to visit them, and they do amazing work there. And
They do.
I appreciate
They really
you bringing
do.
this bill. So,
Absolutely.
do we have any questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? You got your bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members.
All right, I think the fourth measure we will take up this morning will be House Bill 939. Can you tell us the changes since last time we met?
Thank you,
Chairman?
Mr. Chair. I appreciate your guidance and the guidance of many members of this committee. This is a shorter bill and a narrower focus than last time. We're working off of LC 394215S. What the bill does currently is it addresses DUIs only, and the trigger for the bill is if someone applies to reinstate their license, their temporary license, during the pendency of the case, they would be required to take a DUI risk reduction course in order to apply to reinstate their provisional license. Beg your pardon? Okay, wrong LC number. What LC number do y'all have?
We've got ALC 394013.
Okay.
Is Shannon still out there? Could we get a copy? If we can get somebody to make a copy, and then let's pause and we'll bring you.
And I've got a copy of it if that would help.
Okay.
There were a few other tweaks
There's
that
some
were
other
made.
tweaks,
so-
but we need to get a copy where everybody have it.
Okay.
So yeah, if we get the copies made for everybody, I apologize. I thought we had the right one in here.
Sure,
So.
you bet. Stand, do you want me to keep going or stand down?
No,
until
no.
we
If
have
you stand, if
copies?
we get somebody to run some, if you can find a copy machine on this floor, get somebody to make us some copies. Okay. At this time, we'll Chairman Perkle, House Bill 1126.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee, for considering this bill. So several years ago, I was singing in a quartet at church. Happened to be Easter Sunday, and you know how Easter service is. There's more folks at church on Easter Sunday any other service during the year, and this Sunday was no different. So church was packed out, and the song that I was singing in the quartet had a bass, had a drum start. No music to begin with. Bass solo started it off. I happen to be bass. And so the music started partway in the song, several measures in. And so it's kind of important that you hit the right note to begin with, and it helps if you have perfect pitch, which I don't. So when the music started in, I was way off, like 4 keys. And so you could either stop and adjust or make the fatal error and yodel your way up to the right key. It was a disaster. My musical friends would call it vibrato modulation, but I kind of yodeled my way to a bad spot.
Joyful noise.
It was a joyful noise, and my cousin from out of town, his family was there, and I thought he would give me words of encouragement afterwards and say, you know, it wasn't so bad, or, you know, I know your heart was in the right place. Instead, he said, Clay, don't you wish sometimes in life that you had a do-over? A mulligan, as it were. Which is what I'm offering you today with House Bill 1126. This body passed HB 978 in 2018 to allow cameras in school zones. It has been a hot mess since. We know of those who have been ticketed well before school, during noon, when on the weekends, when school's not in session, when the lights are not flashing. I know of one member of this body that got a ticket on the weekend pulling his boat to the lake at night. I've heard from someone that got his car, he got a ticket while his car was being towed through a school zone. There have been attempts over the years to address the concerns that we have, but they've been unsuccessful in reining in bad actors. This bill fully addresses the hot mess that we have by undoing, do-over, 978. School zones cameras have become a gravy train of revenue with very little work for the agencies that employ this technology. We have been sold a bill of goods. It's actually a Trojan horse, a golden goose revenue generator disguised in school safety language. So there's 3 reasons why I think that we need a do-over. There's very little consistency across the state regarding school zone camera ticketing. Some school zones, 25, some 35. Sometimes the lights flash just before and after kids come. Some cameras they ticket without flashing at all. Somewhere in the middle of the day. The location of cameras is inconsistent. So I had someone send me a picture of their ticket, and I went this weekend way outside my district and parked my truck at the point of where the ticket was and marked off how far it was to the end of the school zone. It's less than 5 car lengths. There's a big sign overhead that says, in school zone. And I don't know about you, but when I'm driving on a road and I see the speed limit increase, I gotta tell you what I do. I generally increase my speed, and that's where they get you. So where you were going 32, non-ticketable, when I see in-school zone and I tap the accelerator just a little bit, 35 miles per hour, that results in a $125 thank you note sent to you in the mail 5 weeks later. Some of the school zones are misleading. I drove by 2 school zones this weekend, couldn't see the school at all. One of them I drove by twice. I still don't know where the school's at. The other one, I did notice there was a sign that showed it was down a perpendicular road, but I still couldn't see the school, but I kind of knew where it was at from that. One of the areas I visited had a side street that terminated at the road with the school zone cameras, but there's no signage, so you could go left or right and accelerate to 35, which is what the speed limit was on the road that you was just on, have no idea that you violated the law, and you get a ticket in the mail in 4 or 5 weeks. The second reason is you are guilty until proven innocent, and that is just not fair. I spoke with several individuals that wanted to contest the ticket and eventually just gave up. Said, I have no idea how we do this. I understand there's a form you could fill out, but if somebody borrows my truck and goes through a school zone, 4 or 5 weeks later I get a ticket in the mail, if I'm trying to dispute it and I sign an affidavit, I have to prove where I was. Well, I could have been planting peanuts on the back 40, and there's no way to prove I was back there. I am guilty until proven innocent, which is not fair. And lastly, it's the wrong incentives. So I don't have a dog that is inside dog, but they tell me that when you're training a dog not to use the bathroom inside, it is important that you discipline the dog immediately. Imagine how bad it would be as if you waited 4 or 5 weeks to discipline the dog for messing up in the house. So while I have never received a school zone ticket, personally, I also go around them. I mean, I was going to the FSA office to sign some forms for the farm 2 weeks ago, and I was fixing to take a left and go where the school zone is. I said, you know, I ain't gonna do that. I turned my truck around and I went the long way around so that I would not go through a school zone and inadvertently get ticketed. So I said I've never received a school zone ticket. I can't say absolutely that I've never had one, because as I said this weekend, when school's not in session, I went by several school zones, through several cameras, and I have no idea whether or not they got me for a school zone infraction. There are too many false positives for the state to continue this policy. If our airbags inadvertently went off, or so as you're driving around the road, some of you have this lane assist feature that kind of lights up the side of your rear view mirror or side view mirror. If those didn't work all the time, we wouldn't put up with that. We just wouldn't put up with it. Too many false positives. We were sold this bill with the data that pedestrian deaths in Georgia were on the rise, and we must do something about it. It turns out from the first 6 months of 2019, before school zone cameras, to the first 6 months of 2022, after school zone cameras, pedestrian fatalities increased 57.8%. Clearly, school zone cameras did not contribute to the rise, but they also did not decrease pedestrian deaths. They merely caused an increase in revenues and more taxes for our people. Please hear me. School safety is important. It is vital. I am an advocate for school safety, but if we were really serious about speeding in a school zone, we would insist that law enforcement be located in our school zones. We know that will decrease speeds around our kids. We know that for a fact. When you're driving down the road, I don't care if you're under the speed limit, over the speed limit, at the speed limit. The point that you see a law enforcement officer, what do? You either tap the brake, I don't suggest that, to see the brake lights, or at least you take your foot off the gas. It's Pavlovian. We see a police officer, we take our foot off the gas. I think we should increase school safety by passing this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
15. All right, we do have a few questions this morning. Now, you've lit up the board. Number 28, Representative Ridley.
Thank you. Thank you for this bill. It's been a fight that I've been fighting for 2 years now, and it gets over there in the Senate and it gets all messed up. Is it not true that every other vehicle penalty that you get has a rule in the state of Georgia that 35% of all traffic violations, it cannot be more than 35% of your annual budget for a police department, or it's called ticketing for profit?
I think that is correct.
Is it true that this is not part of that?
I also think that is correct.
Is it also true that I think the AJC run an article that they've had one up for 4 months here and it's already generated $1.something million worth of fines?
I think it was 1.6 in 3 months, but yes, sir.
Thank you.
Number 17, Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine is pretty much just a statement, but in this committee, we always talk about safety, environment, and we do a lot of increasing of fees. Would you not say that citizens have been complaining about these cameras ever since we passed it out of this committee?
Thank you for the question. I don't know about your constituents, but mine certainly have. And when I went to the FSA office the other day, and the guy said, you know, when people know what you do, they said, hey, what you been doing in Atlanta? I said, well, I got to tell you, I dropped a bill to do away with school zone cameras. And he looked at me, he said, and I didn't know what his response would be. And he said, from your lips to God's ears, please let it be.
Thank you.
All right. Number 18, Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to say thank you very much for the bill too, because I just had a neighbor last night come up, the bill, and she just was, school zone. She said, I thought it was 35 miles an hour, but she got her ticket, and she was going 36. But it was 25 miles an hour. And it's kind of like when you get the consistency, like you said 35, 45, but you didn't say anything about 25, and which I love the bill. I think that this will help a lot of our constituents, and I'm looking forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. One of the people that sent me one of their traffic citations from the mail, the cutoff time I think was 8:30 in that school zone, and he got one at 8:29 and 59 seconds. Going out of the school zone, this happened to be the one that was within 5 car lengths of the end of the school zone. It's thank you for the question, though.
Number 15, Representative Kennard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions, please. So you're saying statistically the cameras don't work for their intent?
I would say that we will have people, I would expect, that's going to advocate for the status quo that we have, and they will cite statistics that are going to show that school zone cameras will slow people down. They're going to, but I got to tell you, those that I've looked at, the studies I've looked at, and I've looked at several, fatally flawed. So I know for a fact, when you see a law enforcement officer, I mean, everybody on this committee can attest to that. You automatically slow down. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Permit one more question.
Yes, sir.
So where's the revenue going? I know it's going to several places, but to your knowledge, where's it going?
So, to my knowledge, the bulk of it goes to the private company. So we allow a private company to stick them on our land. on the right-of-way. And the revenue is split, and I'm not sure it is, I've heard that it's 66 to the private company and 34 to the municipality. It's supposed to go for law enforcement, I believe. But I don't know how the split, I can't say that for a fact.
But the lion's share is going to the company.
There's a big numbers going to the company, yes.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we do have someone signed up to speak to the measure, Carolyn Herring. Would you come to the podium and tell us your name and who you're with?
My name is Caroline Herring, here at the Capitol, and I'm Chief of Staff to Mary Margaret Oliver, whose #1 rule would be, don't get emotional, and doggone it if I already feel a little emotional. In Decatur, I'm Caroline Herring Crespino. That's my husband's name. That's my married name. And the intersection nearest our home in Decatur, my son goes through it every day, as did my daughter. And my son has told me since the pandemic, Mom, somebody's just going to get hit. It's a matter of time. And a crossing guard was hit a couple of months ago. My son walked up as the car was speeding away, and he saw the elderly crossing guard lying in the street in his pool of blood. And 4 people were hit that day in Decatur, pedestrians walking, more than one in that very intersection. But there's another intersection that my son goes through to turn right to go to Decatur High School. And that's a very dangerous intersection. I've seen kids take their bikes there at night, and I've called their parents or written them notes and said, where are the lights on your bike? How could you turn left when it wasn't a left turn lane? It's such a dangerous intersection. My son's in high school, and this is a middle school and this is a high school, but of course, the elementary schools down the street, the middle schools, 2 of them are just across the way. My kids have always walked or ridden their bikes to schools always, which is a joy most of the time. And cameras are just about to come. They are testing them. They're not giving citations in Decatur yet, and I have just said, thank you, God, for this. There's an article in the AJC just yesterday that says, this is inconvenient, deeply. This is far from perfect. And it is proven in the Atlanta 10-county area, particularly in Gwinnett, that speeding has decreased in these areas by 50% since it has started. That's a lot. So this morning I was getting pretty wound up, thinking of what the smart things I could say to you. And I went through the intersection that my son would go through in about 20 minutes after I went through. And 2 crossing guards go now at the same time with flashing stop signs. Not just one stops people, 2. And then I kept going, and I started thinking about it, and guess what I started doing? Speeding. I looked down, and I was going 37 in the 25. And I'm not lying. I promise. And I thought, no, I'm not one of those bad people who would hit a crossing guard or a child. I was just distracted. Doggone it, I was speeding. And we are talking about the safety of our children. And I deserved a ticket this morning. Maybe not a gazillion-dollar ticket. Maybe the school wasn't going to be in action for 45 minutes. I was going through at 7:45. The school didn't start till 8:35, or the other one just across the street at 8:45. I could have hit a kid. Why couldn't I have hit a kid? Other people have hit kids in crossing guards. What makes me so different? Nothing. I ask you not to completely wipe out all option for any speed cameras in school zones in this state. Surely there is a better way. Surely there is some way to make amendments and allow a chance for Decatur school kids, and there are, I'll stop. I ask you to reconsider this bill.
Thank you. No further questions. Would the chairman like to make a closing
Sure.
statement?
Sure. And so I agree with the last speaker. School safety is absolutely important, but we should not abrogate our responsibility that we have with law enforcement to be in a school zone and not have. So if she would have been driving through an area that does have a school zone camera, she would get a ticket in 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, you know, don't worry, you will pay. But if we had someone there with lights on, with just the presence of law enforcement, it'll slow them down. Absolutely, school safety is important. I am absolutely confident that school safety increases when we have law enforcement presence and not just an inanimate object that you don't get a ticket for 4 or 5 weeks. Vote for school safety. Vote for this bill. Thank you.
All right, no further questions. What would be the will? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, now we will come back to 9:39. Thanks for your patience. All right, let's get these subs out to everybody. Thank you, Dan. We're good.
Chairman Corbett and members of the committee, Lord works in mysterious ways. As we were waiting for that copy to get made, the story about the dog training, and you got to have the training close to the offense. That's really what this bill does. You all heard from Miss Ina Mitchell, who was back this morning here in the audience. She's an expert on reducing repeat DUI offenses, and if you have the DUI risk reduction training closer to the offense, that has a dramatic effect in reducing recidivism, and this bill that's before you does just that. When someone is charged with a DUI and they apply to get their temporary license, that's when this course would kick in. It is just DUI offenses. It is just DUI training, risk reduction training, so we have narrowed the scope of this bill. The cost of the course is set by statute, as you heard last time. You heard last time that the vast majority of DUI offenses are pled down, or only about 2% result in actual convictions. There are instances where people voluntarily take a risk reduction course to get their sentence reduced. However, that's sporadic. This would have a DUI risk reduction course close to the time of the offense when an offender is seeking to have their license reinstated. The main part of the bill is in Section 3. Sections 1 and 2 just clarify that the offender would not have to take the course twice. If they take it early on and then they are sentenced to take the course, they would get credit for the course they took earlier on, close to the time of their offense. So Ms. Ina Mitchell filed with the chair studies and statistics that proved her testimony last time that education close to the time of the offense dramatically reduces recidivism. We did work with Ms. Shavonda Leslie of DDS since the last committee meeting on the bill to make it shorter and more narrow. Also, the bill applies to offenders who are 21 and up. The state has different rules for younger offenders which remain in place. And so those that are charged with a DUI that results in a suspended sentence would only have to take and be credited with the DUI risk reduction course if they choose to have their license reinstated before adjudication of their DUI. And I respectfully request for you to move do pass this bill, and I appreciate the input which made this a narrower bill that will break the cycle of DUI repeat offenses in Georgia. And you heard a spinal cord reference earlier with the Shepherd Center. This bill will prevent repeat DUIs that could result in serious injury and death, and let's give it a try.
All right, we do have a few questions. Number 28, Chairman Reed.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman Reeves. So now, this bill, what it actually does is if you get a DUI, you have to take this risk reduction class. in order to get a permit to drive. Is that correct?
That's right.
And that's the only thing this bill does.
That's right. If you apply to get your temporary license after you get a DUI, the trade-off is you sit down and take the DUI risk reduction course for the sake of your safety and those on the road.
And currently, right now, what happens if you get a DUI and you want to get a temporary driver's license? How's that work now?
It's, convoluted system, and there is no requirement to take the risk reduction course.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Number 26, Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is this before a person gets due process, if they're gonna go to court, fight the DUI, they do this before they're found guilty?
Correct. And here's the situation. Right now, about 2% of DUIs go all the way to conviction. So some are pled down, some, you have first offender, various things like that. And so you have a small fraction of DUI offenders who are taking a DUI risk reduction course, which the evidence shows is the greatest reduction of recidivism and repeat offenses. So this says if you want to get your temporary license, which is a license, that's not a right, it's a privilege, you will sit down and take the DUI risk reduction course and change your thinking and get educated in a way that would reduce your chances of repeating that offense.
One follow-up,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
please.
So right now, though, there's a possibility you can get a temporary driver's license, but you're saying it's just a convoluted process that they go through?
That's right, and there's no requirement to take the DUI risk reduction course in conjunction with getting your temporary license right now. This says the trade-off is if you want your temporary license after having gotten arrested for DUI, you'll take this course that is designed to prevent you from being back in the same position, which unfortunately happens a lot.
And it's mandatory?
It is mandatory if you apply for the license. It only is mandatory if you say, I want to drive shortly after I got arrested for DUI.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Number 15, Representative.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Reeves. Currently, what is the burden of proof for someone to get a DUI arrest?
Probable cause.
And what does that look like on the road?
You can have weaving in and out. They have the roadside test, breathalyzer, things like that.
So-
Blood test.
So even just the weaving can trigger a DUI arrest?
That's probable cause to stop you. And then, you have the visual inspection of, eyes and roadside tests and things like that.
Okay, one more question.
Yes.
So currently, if you are arrested, your driver's license is taken away on the spot?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's right. Georgia's a zero tolerance state on DUIs.
Number 17, Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted clarification. This is optional, so is there a choice that if that individual want to take this risk program, they can do that, or they can just go forth with the way it is currently now? Or is it mandatory?
It is mandatory if you seek your license shortly after your charge.
Thank you.
If the question about due process, if you want to fight your charges and expedite that, and you think you were, innocent, then you can do that. But if you want to get your license back close after your DUI charge, you take the risk reduction course, and that doesn't have any prejudice to your criminal proceedings, and you would get credited with that course if that is part of your sentence, or if you want to show it to the judge. So you don't have to take it twice, you just have to take it once. But just like that reference earlier to the most effective training is when you have the education and the tools close to the offense. That's what this does. That says, let's have these folks who've had an encounter with law enforcement on DUI to take the class close in time to when they had that encounter with law enforcement.
All right, well, thank you. What would be the will of the committee? Yes, please.
So until somebody goes and proves themselves innocent, and they are innocent, and they've taken this course, they get refunded?
No. But you you have that training. I mean, there are many instances you take driving classes, and that is a benefit to the driver, and it's set by statute, and it's something that the evidence has shown reduces recidivism and repeat offenses, and it's beneficial to driver safety. There are a lot of repeat DUI offenses. This is one way to break that cycle.
Number 28.
Just a quick
Chairman
question.
Ridley.
So, right now you get pulled over and they think I've been drinking. Now, we've already had in the Supreme Court established that roadside sobriety test is not, it's not actually a good thing to do. Or there was some flaws in it. What was the prosecutor's bunch wanting to change that? Isn't there some flaws in that thing? They're saying now that if I refuse to do it, I can't be charged. I can't lose, like used to, you lost your license for a year, right? But now the Supreme Court said that there's some flaws in that. There's some flaws in the breathalyzer on the side of the road. Or did they get that part fixed?
There have been some adverse court decisions on DUIs. So in the meantime, this is something that gives training for those DUI offenders who may get found innocent due to due process and legal issues, but they've had a DUI offense.
But so the question going on over here. So if I get pulled over, the guy says I'm DUI. Do I automatically lose my license, right?
Yes.
All right. So then it may be 6 months before I can get a court date to go fight this. But I've got to go take this class to get a temporary license. Is that?
Well, you've got your speedy trial demand. There, I mean, just as was testified about the school zone cameras, the cities and counties have an incentive to move these cases along because they don't get their money until the charges are resolved. So those cases do run pretty expeditiously. But, again, only a small fraction of those go all the way to trial and conviction. This brings it closer to the time of the offense.
Okay.
And this doesn't have any impact on your criminal case. The impact is on your driver's license and on your driver's safety. There's something that caused you to have that encounter with the law enforcement, and this training will reduce the recidivism and the repeat offense.
Okay.
It's, and despite court decisions and all that, this is the best tool we have right now in Georgia to reduce repeat DUI offenses. You heard from Ms. Mitchell last time. The chairs received the studies. This is an awesome way to break that cycle of having people to have multiple encounters with law enforcement.
We've got two more questions, and we're going to move on. We're going to number 15, Representative Canal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could this by accident be an implicit admission of guilt?
No.
You took the course, you must be guilty.
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay, number
Right.
27.
And it's inadmissible unless you want it to be, but no, this is a administrative proceeding relating to your driver's license. And as the last committee hearing showed, a lot of defendants will show a DUI risk reduction course to the court in the course of their sentencing, but this will broaden that successful model. It will give a closer tie to the offense and the training, which is the way to reduce repeat offenses.
Okay, now what would be the will of the committee? Number 27, Chairman Weedow.
Mr. Chair, I think given that we just got this substitute, and I know the author is well intended here, but I think there's a host of questions that I think we need to probably simmer on. I'd like to suggest tabling it just to keep it alive, make sure we have the opportunity
Are
to.
you making that motion to table?
I'll make that motion right
Do we
now.
have a second? Second. Motion and a second to table. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. All right, we do have a couple other measures. Everybody can stick around with us for a few minutes. I'm gonna ask Representative McLean if he'll speak about his. I don't think it'll take very long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hopefully it shouldn't take very long, but because should I stand up here or go down?
No, you're right. You're good right there.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do a bill if I can find it. Pass on down that end. I don't make sure everybody get a copy. LC 394167. It's the LC number. And what this is, it is getting a special license plate honoring the alumni of Southern University. And the fund raised by this sale of the special license plate shall be dispersed by the Atlanta Metropolitan Chapter of the Southern University Alumni Federation of Georgia Incorporated. And the reason that they're roughly, and all of the, what I like to say is all the requirements have been made. And there are roughly about 2,000 alumnus here in Georgia. And what I try to say is that maybe I want to say maybe a year, probably several years back, the Southern University player and the University of Georgia, one of their players were injured. And when they were injured, it was one of those things that they formed a bond. And what they would like to do is keep that bond. And you've got some very prominent people that I would like to say that went to Southern. The solicitor of Fulton County is a Southern grad. Branco is a Southern grad. Mercedes owner. Mel Blunt, even Mel Blunt, a football player, is a Southern grad. All of them live in Georgia. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I ask for a favor, and it would not start until January 1 of 2025.
All right, and all the requirements have been met. I have that letter submitted.
All the requirements have been met, and this is a
and-
copy of the of what they'll be doing in black and white, not color.
All right, do we have any questions? We got a motion to pass and a second.
I do need an amendment for it to say January 1st of 2025, Mr.
All
Chair.
right, okay, we got a motion on the bill. Now we have a motion on the amendment to change the date. We got a motion on the date. Do we have a second? We got a motion and a second. All right, we're gonna vote to change the date on the bill to January
1, 2025.
January 1, 2025. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, now we're gonna vote on the bill as amended. All in favor, voting on the bill as amended, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Bill
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
passes as amended.
Yes.
And if we got just a few more minutes, this is gonna be here. I'm gonna ask Representative Daniels if she'll come forward and present her bill this morning. Like I said, this will be hearing only on this one this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this morning, I am presenting House Bill 1284. And we named it Addie's Law. You may have seen in the news recently that we had an 8-year-old little girl in our community that was struck on trying to board her school bus. After doing an extensive amount of research on this, evidently this is something that happens all the time. Georgia is actually leading the nation in this statistically, and so after looking at some of the things that are associated in other states with this crime, I drafted this bill. And what it does is it encourages our local school systems to pick up on the right side of the road where a child is being picked up if the child lives in an area on a road that is over 40 miles an hour. It also increases the fine from $250 to $1,000. I believe that this actually would address the root issue of the problem. The problem obviously isn't the school buses, it is the driver's behavior. And so now I know some people may think, oh, that's a large fine, but it's actually pretty on par with other states. Other states actually have it going up as high as $10,000. So the idea that every time that you pass a school bus, if their stoplights are out, you run the risk of hitting a child. And so the idea that you're only charged $250 and you just continue to do it, it's a little egregious, but it does make it a high and aggravated misdemeanor, which puts it on par with reckless driving. And in this bill, it also gives the ability to send it to the insurance provider and allow the insurance provider to determine what they would like to do.
All right, and that'd be the last part, 47 through 50, talking about the insurance provider.
Yep.
How will that coordination work between the locals, the DOR, and the insurance company? Is that something that can be done? Have we had that conversation?
Yeah, so it's my understanding is that Geics should have that information, but I after talking to Ledge Council, that this, sending it through the Department of Revenue was the right avenue.
And DOR would just send just proof of the insurance, but then it'd be, the local law enforcement then would have to determine which insurance company to send that through. That's the part I'm
Yes.
trying to figure out.
Yeah, it would be administrative.
If, that's what would happen on that part of it. We do have, wow, you didn't explain it very well. There's several questions. Reference 17, Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I definitely believe in safety, but do you know how many tickets are issued for passing the school bus in a year?
I do not, but I know that nationally, so this is something that people continue to do, and I think it is because the penalties aren't stiff. Nationally, there was a study done from 2018 to 2019, and in 2019, there were 95,319 incidences a day.
So you're thinking to increase it to $1,000? Why not 500? But to go up as high as $1,000?
Like I said, and I've looked at other states as well, and this is actually on par with what other states are doing, because it is such an issue. Now, you know, in all honesty, when I drafted this bill, I actually put it at $2,500, because I think that the only way people are going to quit doing this is if they believe it is going to affect them financially.
Thank you. So you've also added that a fine of not less than $1,000 or by confinement for not more than 12 months, or both. So that's what this bill is doing. You're either going to jail or you're paying and going to jail.
Yes, so the way that it is currently written in code, it also allows for that if you have multiple offenses.
Thank you.
Number 18, Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my only concern is, my only problem is on line 20 when you said 40 miles an hour or greater for a bus to not allow to park. I don't know. It'd be very hard in Gwinnett County, only because I've got Corley Elementary School that's right off Pleasant Hill Road, and Ronald Reagan dumps into Pleasant Hill Road, and that road is has a 55 mile an hour until school zone. So I'm just trying to, did you talk to any school systems about this, or do you just, because you definitely couldn't have talked to mine, because I think if you would have, it's no way that they could do this. No 40 miles per hour, especially when we've got Pleasant Hill Road that's at 55.
Yes, so thank you for bringing that up. So when I actually drafted this, that was a concern that I had, because we have a lot of one-way streets as well where I'm from. And so what I did was actually worked with the school systems, and Gail and the Department of Ed have actually reached out to me, and they are in favor of this version of this bill because it gives them the ability to, what this bill does is it basically requires them to consider the routes. So they have to take this into consideration. It doesn't necessarily mean that if they can't pick up on that road anymore. It just means that they have to take it in consideration when they're planning their routes, because obviously there are going to be, the way this is written, there was thought put into, obviously there will be circumstances where it's unavoidable.
So what you're saying is excuse me, Mr. Chairman, so you're saying it's on line 20 that they have the option to pick it up? I'm not reading it that way.
Yeah, so on line 18, it says they shall consider routes that do not have stops requiring a student. So it literally just means that they have to consider it when they're making it.
Well, so if you would say may consider, I think it would, but when you say shall, shall and may are two different words.
Yes, and so they have to consider it, but they don't have to say that they cannot pick up on that road.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
that
Chairman.
might be a question for Ledge Council. Your thoughts on shall or may in that instant?
So it's basically, when they're establishing their route, they have to consider if there's a 40-mile-per-hour street that a child will have to cross, that they're trying to make the route so that the child would not have to cross the street. When they consider that in developing, so they have to consider it, but they still have the autonomy to make the route as they decide.
Okay, well, thank you. We got a couple more questions, and I think we're going to have to move on. Number 15, Representative Kenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Daniels, I appreciate the spirit of the bill, of course. In my situation, I run a nonprofit. I have a fleet of vehicles to get our clients to various places. We have some volunteer drivers. So what happens if one of our volunteer drivers violates the school bus camera? Who is penalized? The owner of the vehicle or the driver?
So it's the owner of the vehicle, unless a cop sees you do it. So if you are pulled over by a police officer, they are going to charge the person driving the vehicle. If it is through a camera, they are charging the person that owns the vehicle.
Okay, so Inspire would be on the hook for $1,000 or more.
Correct.
All right, like I said, this is a hearing only today, so we're going, number 27, Chairman Weedow.
Well, address the last two questions real quick to try to maybe help the author. So in that situation, I'm not a big fan of cameras. I think everyone knows that. But in that situation, Representative Charter, you would have the opportunity to contest that through the means of which you would contest any other camera-related citation, where you would say you're not driving the vehicle. There's a process for that, but we can get offline and talk about that a little bit. To Representative McLean's commentary, I had a little bit of heartache about that as well. The word consider is obviously the key word in that sentence, shall consider. I mean, in my district, there's absolutely no way they would achieve a situation where they're having bus route without being on a road that's over 40 miles per hour. I actually think this measure is probably more important than posted cameras in school zones, quite frankly, because this is where children are entering and exiting the actual bus. Huge concern over that. I appreciate you bringing this. Obviously, we have some questions we'll get through.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for hanging around. Appreciate it.